And good morning, everyone, and welcome to this roundtable looking at the conservation and kind of support for technical theatre heritage. And thanks very much, everyone, for joining us this morning. My name is Nick Hunt. I'm going to be chairing the sessions this morning, kind of guiding us through and hopefully keeping us more or less on track in terms of a schedule. Just as a reminder of what the schedule is for this morning, we've got 4 short presentations by people who are involved in this area, who are going to talk a little bit about their own kind of involvement, their background, the kind of collections and archives that they're working with. And that will help us, I think, sort of set the parameters for the discussion. So there'll be an opportunity for a discussion coming out of that. Then we're going to take a short break and come back, and Chris van Goethem is going to talk about the CANON project that this session is a part of, and then we'll be able to have a further discussion, particularly looking at how we move forward with all of this. So for those discussion sections, please, if you've got any questions you want to ask the panelists or feed into the discussion, please use the Q&A section. There should be a button at the bottom of your screen marked Q&A, so you can use that to put your questions in there, and we'll do our best to get through all of the questions during the discussion period. Or once we're into the discussions, you can also use the raise hand button, and then we'll open your microphone and you can ask your question directly. So we'll move on now to the presentations, and first of all we've got Dr. Stefan Gräbener, who is an architect and chairman of the Initiative TheaterMuseumBerlin. Stefan, over to you. I think you're muted at the moment.
Okay, so I will share my screen and hopefully you see a video.
Yeah, if you can full screen that.
Okay.
Great.
So I muted the audio of the video and tried to talk free, and hope maybe from time to time I have to stop the video if I'm not matching the time schedule of the video pictures. Okay. I'm chairman of the Initiative Theatre Museum in Berlin, an association that emerged in this form in 2011 from 2 older associations that were founded back in 1994 and 96, with at the moment about 60 members. The Berlin initiative was association before was focusing on establishing a theatre museum, but the other one was only focusing on preserving historical theatre architecture and theatre technology. And from this was the foundation also of the Spotlight Museum at Garriott's company, you might know. This association didn't own the stuff. Garriott's took it over and made this museum from. And then there's a Leipzig collection where we're closely associated to, but not members of. So the new initiative tries to concentrate on establishing a theatre museum in Berlin, and also trying to preserve these technical aspects as well, and work on it to make it different to this a little later. I'll just stop it shortly. We have several stuff which is mainly rescued in some cases from other from the scrapyard and other places, because actually the statutes of the association do not provide establishing a collection. And so at the moment we try to get rid of all this stuff and come back to focusing on our original goal of establishing a theatre museum. And don't have all these collections. So what type of collection do we have? We have these 35 sheets of original stage designs from about the 1920s to 60s from Freiburg and Breisgau in southern Germany. Most of them are not clear what they show. They were also saved from the garbage can. And then we have these stage that some people might know. It comes from a school project in Bayreuth, where a teacher had a project over 16 years lasting, and when he was retiring, nobody wanted to have it. We had an exhibition in Berlin and showed it here, and then he gave it to us. We took it over and are now working with this. The main problem with this is the stage measures 6.30 meters by 5.30 meters, and with a total height of 5.55 meters, and especially the height is always a problem to find a place. This stage is dismantled in a container, and the main container had a big problem. We are now in the shed of the Staatsoper with this stuff, because you see here the roof is coming down, and this had to get out of the container. We have another container where the rest is still inside, but yeah, as I said before, we want to give it away somehow in a better place. So our activities are exhibitions. This was the first exhibition where we then afterwards took the stage and some exhibition material as well to ours, and then we had some exhibitions following it. There was one the next year in 2011 in Görlitz, and this was a big exhibition in Berlin as well, with a reduced stage focusing on the history of the Staatsoper in Berlin, but taking it as a kind of red line for talking about theater in total, not only about the Staatsoper. And then in 2016, this was the best one of all, I think. We had a 3-month exhibition in Frankfurt Oder, next to the Polish border, where we had the opportunity to play theater on the stage with pupils from 10 to 12 age, with a special play written by the teacher, focusing on the pupils itself, on the stage possibilities and everything. This was quite nice. And since this time, we try to find other partners who will do it. From time to time, we give these machinery, especially the machinery, to theater productions who use it for sound effects or something. And here it was in the Weather Museum for 2 years, and the people could play with it. And the last exhibition we planned in Putbus on the island of Rügen had to be cancelled due to the pandemic. And later on, there was no possibility. Also, I'm now teaching for over 20 years, first at the Technical University with the architects, and I use this opportunity to make little designs for housing the stage, or doing temporary exhibition spaces and so on. These are some examples of students' works, and a bachelor project in Düsseldorf about a theater museum, or a master project here in Berlin with the stage design department. And for several years now, I'm working loosely with Max Keller about his collection, and we are planning somehow exhibition focusing on his work, but also especially on the impact his inventions and his work does for theater and lighting in the whole world also. From time to time, we try to get other collections from other people. For example, a costume designer of the German opera in Berlin, who's now in a nursery home, to get it to a museum collection, but nobody wants to take it. This is very strange somehow. So at the moment, I don't know what's happening with it. And the only nice thing is that the Brandt collection from a member of our initiative was given to the Free University in Berlin, and they're now starting to research on this collection of over 600 sheets. The other main stuff we're doing is this publication, normally once a year. And actually, the number 11 is 1 year late. You might know it. Some of you have written for it already, Chris, for example. And it's from 2020 on, it's now fully bilingual. So we translate every article from English to German and German to English. And with getting rid of this stage, we try to focus again more intensely on the original goal of establishing a theater museum and not waiting for the collections to open their minds, but we have to do some more work, I think. Here are also examples from this master project from the TU with the stage design, but we try to, especially here the last one, we try to find theaters to adopt this project, but nobody really cares about it. This is always a little pity how the people here react to this stuff. What's interesting is that the Bühnentechnische Rundschau, the BTR from DTHC, starts focusing more on historical aspects since the Die vierte Wand is getting more famous. What was now the number 5? Okay. Yeah, this is the stage. If you want to have it, you can get it for free. And if you care for it, I try to continue the work on the vierte Wand, but it's quite a lot of work, and it's unpaid work as everything in this initiative, because we're a non-profit organization. We're happy to find some money to print it, and otherwise everything else is non-paid. And the main problem in our society is that the more or less only active person in this society is me, and only from time to time some members are supporting me, but normally I'm doing it all on my own. Even if we have 60 members, that's also a little problem. So this at the end leads to the questions, question, how do you see the future? Yeah, the prospect of the future is rather bleak, and the German institutions who are more or less called theater museums are not really interested in getting another theater museum in Berlin. And the collections in Berlin keep quiet because of the main so-called German Theater Museum, which is not a national museum, but not only focuses on Bavaria or Munich, but on the whole of Germany. So it's called the German Theater Museum. So the people talk to us or to me, and I'm sitting at their table and talking to them and try to interest them. And the main problem in Germany is that the theater studies are excluding theater technology and theater architecture. And they're only focusing on everything else, but not on these two topics. And this is hilarious, we think. This is not the solution for running a good theater museum. We try to convince them that they should change this. At Free University, there's a professor who's now establishing theater historiography, which includes technology and architecture. But if you see, for example, here the Berlin City Museum, the future will be similar to the now future, the changes in the Victoria and Albert Museum. You might have heard of it, that they more or less closed the theater collection and degraded it to a depot. A lot of people were set free. And in Berlin, there's only one person working in the theater department. And if I'm informed right, it's the biggest theater collection of a city museum in the whole of Europe. One person is working there. And when she retires in, don't know, 6 or 7 years, there will be no follower. And this will also be a depot full of wonderful stuff, but nobody takes care of it. And this is the situation in Germany, and not only in Germany, but I'm afraid in the whole world. And the technical museum in Berlin, who should take care of technical theater, is at the moment not interested in this topic. This is also a little problem. In Germany, I can't see a real basis of research in technical theater, and not from the traditional universities, and nothing is really happening. They only recognize it. This was hard work to tell them, but the only people who do some work are mostly pensioners, old technicians who are not at work anymore and who work on their own. We have now a lot of people from the whole of the world who are doing such work. And there are some research projects also in Germany, or here a picture from an exhibition in Frankfurt-Oder. It's a Kleist Museum, which called themselves immersive. And there was nothing real immersive. You just see here this info thing, and then you could put a tablet on it and something happens. They didn't tell the normal people that the most immersive stuff is in the catalog. And it's, this immersive term is quite strange. It's more or less fun, but I don't know if it's really leading to something, or it's just a research project and then afterwards nothing really changes. And also the historians who are researching about theater architecture, they're only focusing about construction and everything, but not on the stage house, for example. They don't care about the theater that is happening in it. They don't have any idea what's happening in it. They only look at the auditorium and the public, but not the relation between all this and the use of the buildings. This is also very strange. We tried to sell the stage, and we had an interesting partner over in Britain. The National Maritime Museum in Cornwall was interested in taking over our stage. We now have also these fantastic books here from Peter McKinnon, for example, Sailors and Theatre, or so it's called. And but unfortunately, they had a big damage on their building during the last winter storms, and now they have to spend all their money in repairing their building and couldn't afford the stage. But the original plan was to bring it in this main hall and showing the relation between sailors and ships and the stage. We are in discussion with the city of Görlitz to that they might take it over, but too many politicians are involved, and so it's slowed down and nothing really happens. So we don't know. I'm going back to focus on the stage, on the vierte Wand, and hopefully the issue 11 will be existing before Christmas, but the future of our society is very unclear, and in Germany it doesn't really make sense to fight for this theater museum in Berlin. I don't know if I will see it in my lifetime. Yeah, this was my short introduction. And here I'm back again.
Great, thank you, Stefan. Really interesting and I think helpful to get us started. And that, for me, particularly thinking about, the politics of institutions, I think came through very clearly in that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's something we'll be returning to in our discussions later in the morning. I'd like to move on now to our second presentation, Pieter De Ketelaere, who is project manager for heritage at the City Theatre in Bruges. Pieter, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning to you all. I will share my screen. Like this. You see my presentation?
Not yet.
Oh. And what do you see then? Do you see me? Or?
Just seeing you at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Now you have to see it.
Right.
Okay. So I will give you a short overview of our project we have in Bruges. So starting with who are we and what's the project, and the context and how this project came in existence, then the project outline, and we will close with the challenges and the future of the project. So we're the Royal City Theatre in Bruges, in Belgium, near the coast. And you may know Bruges from its medieval canals and Jan van Eyck and Michelangelo in the Church of Our Lady. And between all of this, amidst all of this, there's the 1869 theatre building, the City Theatre building, which has an auditorium of 650 seats, has a foyer, a banquet hall, and the auditorium, of course. It was restored in 2002 in the context of Bruges as the cultural capital of Europe. And in 2022, or since the 1980s, we're hosting theatres, so we don't have productions of our own. We receive productions who we program on our stage. There's apart from the theatre building in the center of the city, there are also 4 other venues which are part of the same organization. And then our team is Pieter and Pieter. We are with two of us who are managing this project. So this is the interior of the auditorium, to give you an idea. This is the foyer or the banquet hall, and these are the original chairs who were restored during the restoration in 2002. So the context of our project has some different roots. There was a bottom-up move, you can say, by the theater technicians. So until the 1970s, 80s, the theater was quite the same as it was in the 19th century, and a lot of stuff was hidden in the cellars and the attic. But some of our theater technicians had the attention to it and saved it from the containers when during the restoration in the 90s and the 2000s. So the attention with the theater technicians really saved some of our what is now our collection. The second thing is the collection. So we have this collection, but there's no place in Flanders who really gives attention to this kind of heritage. So we had nowhere to go with this collection. In 1869, so the theatre was built in 1869, and in 2019 there was the 150th anniversary of the theatre. So this was an occasion to which a small exhibition was organized by the Bruges museums, and it also gave some attention to the theatre as a whole and theatre as an aspect of Bruges as a city. And the last part is Bruges as a city full of heritage. Bruges is UNESCO World Heritage, and the museums have quite an expertise in collections and heritage and managing these kind of objects. So this all led to project appliance by the Flanders government for a cultural project, and it was honored for 2 years. So it the period is from June 2021 to September 2023. So it's not a structural project, it's temporarily. So the funding and the team of the project, so as I said, it's running from 2022 to 2023. We have 1.25% full-time. So that's me and my colleague, Pieter De Ketelaere, who is part-time on the project and part-time on the as a technician. He's active as a technician in the theatre. And we have 25,000 euros as a working budget. That's apart from the staff cost. So we're paid from this project, and then we have 25,000 euros per year. So in total, that's around 50,000 euros to do all the activities we want. Apart from the 1.25% full time, we have like a board of expertise which exists out of the city services as the Bruges museums, the archives and the library, and the Erfgoedcel, which is an organization within the city who has attention for heritage with for organizations who don't have heritage as their core business. So that's they're supporting and advising us. And then we have also expertise from a more broad, not only the city, but within Flanders. So we have Faro, Semper, and the RITCS. Then our goal, we can put our goal in this sentence, and it is to develop the Royal City Theatre of Bruges as a place to show theatre technical and scenographic heritage relevant within Flanders. And then I will show you the outline of the project, which exists out of like 3 main parts. The first is our own collection, which exists of 320 objects, around 320 objects, and it's mainly technical equipment and theatre props and furniture. And all these objects were measured, inventoried, and photographed, and you can consult them online, which I will show you now. So this is a portal or a platform by Flanders, and it hosts a lot of collections from cities, from museums, from different organizations, and we are part of that. So all the objects were inventoried, and you can consult them here. And I will scroll through it so you can have an idea of what the collection is about. So there are a lot of furniture, theater furniture who were used during the 19th century, as well as props who were ordered by a Parisian cartonnier, Charles Allais, for those who may knew him. And there's also a lot of technical equipment. Also, theater portraits were used in different plays. Some backdrops from the 1960s, more recent. So that gives you an idea of our collection. It's not that big, 320 objects, but we, as the project is evolving, we have some more recent acquisitions, which I show you, like these two theater lights, who are from a nearby theater, but we bought them at an auction. But they are from the Cursaal in Ostende, so in a nearby city at the sea. And these kind of lights were also used once in Bruges, so it's now part of our collection. And this is a lighting desk we took over from the opera in Ghent. They were planning to scrapyard it, to put it on the container and sell it as scrap. But thanks to our project, we could manage it to take it over. So now it's in our cellar, and we don't really know yet what to do with it, but we would love to make it work again. Maybe it's a bit too ambitious, but we really want to restore it. One thing, it's a bit of a problem, is the asbestos, which is in this piece, but we still have to figure out how we can deal with that. Another part is the or another recent acquisition are the barrels from the opera in Ghent as well. Like in 1993, the opera in Ghent was restored, but they only restored the public parts, and everything which was scenery they took out. But the Museum of Industries in Ghent saved some of the pieces, and they saved it from 1993 till a few months ago, but they really never did something with it. So they put it on their list of objects they want to give away or to find another destination, and that destination was us. So we took over this collection as well, together with the lighting desk you saw before. So I will return to the slide. So we have these recent acquisitions, but we also have a place in our theater to show, or that we want to, where we want to show these collections to a public. And that's our attic. So above the foyer, we have a small attic where we have this presentation of our collection. And in the future, we want to do guided tours in this part. We also have like offices not far from this place, which in the future will be won't be offices anymore. So this is also a place we can use in the future. To give you an idea, there are some pictures. So the props are presented here, as well as these theater portraits. Here at the right, you see all the lighting desks. which are showed, and the different theatre furniture. So these are pictures from the tours we organized this summer as an experiment, you can say. So the second main part of our project, apart from the collection and showing this collection during visited or guided tours, is the summer exhibition. In 2021, there was the first summer exhibition on which we could, where we received 1,800 visitors. And last summer in 2022, we had another summer exhibition, and we could host 4,000 visitors. It was conceived as a tour through the building with interactive elements. So there was a lot of stuff you could do. It wasn't just like a museum. It was we wanted to give an experience to our visitors. And in 2023 we have a new edition. On the right you see the poster for the campaign. And now I will show you some pictures of it, of the exhibition. So in the entrance hall we had a carriage to show the connection, how the rich people arrived at the theater. In the cellars there was as well a presentation of different objects. In the cellar there was also these machinery, the sound machinery, with a small animation film, and the visitors had to produce the different sounds with this animation film. Here's the orchestra pit. There was also an activity here, so people could sit on these chairs, and once they were seated on this chair, one instrument began to play. When the second person sat on the second chair, the second instrument began to play, and go so on. So they could compose like their own small orchestra to give them a small experience of how it is to be a musician in the orchestra pit. And on the where the director stands, there was like a small tablet where you could choose your own genre of music. So you could choose from the strings or the coppers and so on. On the stage we had the scale theater, which we lent from Chris. Thank you, Chris. And people could operate it themselves. So there was one of us who showed how it works, and people could also operate the machinery by themselves. Then in the auditorium there was like a big catwalk, which allowed people to cross the auditorium from the stage. And before they went up on the stage, there was like this big button they could push, and when they pushed it, the light changed, and there was a spot on the visitors, and there was applause in the auditorium. So you really had like this experience, you were a star on the stage. Another thing we did was like we have the two boxes of honor at both sides of the stage, and one of them, the box of the mayor, had or has like a small reception room, which was until recently used as a place to store all kinds of stuff, but we managed to restore it between quotation marks, and we arranged it as it could have been in the 19th century as a reception room. So this gives a small idea of what the summer exhibition was. So it wasn't focused on the theatre technical or theatre scenographic parts of our collections, but on the way we showed some of our collection. It was like showing the theatre building as a whole, but also how the different parts of the theatre we used in the 19th century. And we also, so the attic wasn't part of the route because it was a bit too difficult to take people all the way up, and it wasn't really compatible with the tour. But we gave every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we gave guided tours where we did the normal tour, you can say, and also a small excursion to the attic. So, and the third part of the project is the oral and documentary history, and we want to research the how the theatre was used in the earlier days. And one of the things we want to do is to search the police and fire brigade archives, because they always had to. There was always a police officer and a fire. The fire brigade was as well. Present at performance, and they had to write reports, and we want to dig them up in the archives to find how an evening in the 19th century in the theatre, how did it feel, how was this, and then we also, that's the last part, we have this oral history. We want to document how the manually operated machinery was operated, because we have some colleagues who recently retired, but they did operate the machinery who was still in place until the 1990s. How did they that? We want to capture that knowledge and their skills. Then we have the challenges and in the future. One of the main challenges, who isn't on this slide, is maintaining this project, because as I said, it is only for 2 years we have this funding. So at the moment it's ending in 2023 September. So we have to convince our theatre, our director, to continue this project, and also have to find the funding, of course. Another thing is we want a living collection. We don't want really to be a museum where you show objects to the public which they aren't allowed to touch and put it behind glass. We want to keep this collection alive. For example, as I showed the lighting desk with the asbestos in, it would really be nice if we could make that work again, and also let the people experience how this stuff worked. Another issue is which objects do we accept in the future, because we already had some offers of objects or organizations or people who have stuff that they don't want to store themselves anymore. And they saw, oh, in Bruges they have this project, why don't we drop this stuff in Bruges? But we also have a limited space. We don't have endless space to store these things. That's one of the challenges we have. Then how to implement a durable heritage program in a living, working theatre, because the core business of the Royal City Theatre of Bruges is still programming performances and showing this to the public, and we have to find a balance between this core business and our heritage program, which involves as well the convincing our stakeholders and to find funding and staff. And last thing is so we have this summer exhibition, which has to be appealing for a broad the broad public, for an audience, but we want to show as well this heritage and our collection, which is not always for everybody. So we have to find a balance between these two as well. So then I have to thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you, Peter. That's a really interesting presentation, and I think just goes to show what can be done, partly when there's some funding, of course, but also when there's that terrific collaboration you've obviously got between yourselves as the theatre and the museums, and I think that's really interesting, bringing those different kind of different institutions, different expertise together to make something happen. And it's very clear. I mean, I've had the pleasure of seeing your collection, but also know that some of the events you've been putting on a really kind of vibrant way of engaging with people and creating a sense of yeah, getting people to understand and the feeling of what it's like, what it was like historically in theatres. So thank you for that. Moving on now to our third presentation for this morning, Jim Laws, who owns a very substantial collection of lighting equipment in the UK, and particularly that's been sustained to a significant extent by its commercial use in terms of hiring that equipment out to film shoots, to theatres doing period sets and so on and so forth. So over to you, Jim.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the CANON project for inviting me. I'm one of the many UK collectors of theatre technical history, some of whom want to reach the next stage of being able to hand the collection over and ensure that it has a future. I have been given the points I should cover under 6 headings. The first heading will be answered in quite a long way. The others are easier. The first one, what is your organisation? Who takes care of the collection? The organisation of Jim Laws Lighting is a private collection of documents, books and historical artefacts, many of which are working. There is currently a single owner, me, with a few occasional helpers. We share various practical skills, knowledge and discoveries to take care of it. There is no institutionalized care regime except for pat testing. I would like to explain how this simple situation has come about. I was born in 1948, have been in lighting since 1968, working in regional producing theatres throughout the UK as an electrician lighting designer. By 1974, I was elected a member of the Society of British Theatre Lighting Designers, and I am now member 16 of the ALPD. In the 1970s, the theatres I worked in were underprovided with lights, so I bought old ones from the 1930s from theatre projects at £5 each. That was about a quarter of a week's wage to add to the lighting possibilities. These lights went from theatre to theatre with me until by 1980, I went freelance and began supplying period lighting to video shoots for Kate Bush and feature films like Victor Victoria and Chaplin, where I advised on gas and early electric lighting. I worked under the banner of Ancient Lights, which has an extra meaning in the UK as a statutory right to light, often invoked if someone wants to build a house and block your daylight. I began to teach lighting and sound history in drama colleges, leading studio classes in colour music. Through teaching lighting history, I was forced to put some structure into what I knew through using kit, through hearing industry veterans' experiences in the ABTT Archaeology Committee, reading many excellent historic textbooks and being naturally interested. From this arose the realization that lighting from any age is a technical and cultural progression. Around 10 years ago, I sold the hire component of my collection to a new firm Ancient Lights Limited, which works in the field of film, TV, display and launches. Their website is www.ancientlights.tv. Worth a look, although you may be surprised at the current appearance of some of the lights. Please remember that these now have a second life in show business. The launch of the Backstage Heritage Collection movement in the UK at Plaza in 2014 created an explosion in data exchange set up by John Primrose at www.theatrecrafts.com. This gave me an impetus to sort out my collection of historic lighting desks and to provide enough boards and lights for the collection's members to set up a permanent display at White Light under the care of White Light director Chris Nichols. This resource is available for the use of teachers, students and researchers. It is particularly pleasurable to me that an informal club of retired Strand electric systems designers has taken the control story forward into the computer and the digital age, which is something I could never do. So now I face the challenge of reducing what remains with me to a core which tells the story of lighting from a social and design point of view. I still have my hand-drawn lighting designs and plots from the 1970s and hope that, with the help of friends, we can tell the lighting story in a way that the future generations can understand and be excited by. What type of collection is it? And the size and the equipment? It is a collection of historic, domestic and theatre lighting, and to a lesser extent, theatre sound. I also have most of my lighting plans and plots and a sizable research library. Being a lanterns man, lighting people are either lanterns or controls people. There is most of Strand's output of their pattern lights from the 1930s to the 1980s, plus some more modern profiles from CCT, ADB and Silicon. I have some tungsten moving lights, kindly donated by Glyndebourne Opera. The size, aiming to be placed within a 120-metre square shed with a good blackout. The scope of the equipment includes historic lighting boards, which can be quite bulky. There are some very large scenic projectors. I have a well-made mid-20th century British model theatre with its own lighting, which was made by a member of the scenic staff of the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. There is also some earlier candlelight and gaslight equipment and a variety of simple optics for candlelight, which demonstrates how lenses and reflectors work without trailing cables. What type of activities do you organise? Interested people and organisations are welcome to visit our home in rural Suffolk by arrangement. There have been visits by students of lighting and sound from drama schools with practical sessions to explore how earlier sources of light can be used and how they relate to modern practice. A few scholars have come as well, which has been great. Although the collection is in the process of being built up for this purpose, it is certainly in a viewable state. What is the goal? The overall goal of my collection is to show how we worked with lighting from the days of the sun and oil lamps and how theatre lighting became increasingly specialised. There should be the ability to carry out lighting experiments and studio scale colour music. What are the achievements, difficulties, risks and opportunities? Achievements. To have built up the collection, thought it through and largely held its core together over 50 years. Is this what is now called curating? To have talked with it. Hopefully I have raised some young people's interest in lighting history, encouraged them not to assume vaguely it's always been like it is now. My two captioned PowerPoint presentations are on pre-electric and electric lighting. Difficulties. Supporting it with investment. In the early days, it had to pay its way. Maintaining stocks of working lamps in old spots and spotlights will become very difficult as the stocks of tungsten and tungsten halogen lights diminish. Risks. Finding a means of handing it over to an organization that will keep it together and enable it to be accessed as a teaching tool for me and increasingly others. This has proved to be an elusive goal so far. We've already heard touched on about the Victoria and Albert museum's takeover of the Theatre Museum, and that has happened. That's been one of, let's say, many disappointments. We seem to specialise in small disappointments in the UK. I've just heard some monumental dilemmas come up in I think Germany and in Belgium, and ours in a way quail by comparison in their scope and ambition. Opportunities to create more than a collection of artifacts. This should be a hands-on storyboard of how lighting became more structured and increasingly specialized, to a point where it is now openly acknowledged as an essential feature of popular culture. The ability of costume and scenic students at Rose Bruford College to pick up the essentials of creative lighting in terms of convention, composition and timing within one intensive day led me to realize that lighting has a universal language. There are cultural lighting responses in everyone's brain, regardless of their specialism. How do you see the future? I view it with great caution. There have recently been some lighting history museum initiatives that have been stillborn after a lot of committed faith and work. It really beats me how this happens. We got quite a long way down the line with an initiative down in Christchurch, Bournemouth, where two large rooms within a large social and cultural centre were being earmarked at board level for installation with a lighting museum. Then there were changes within the boardroom, and it was pulled just at the point where we were all busting a gut to make it happen over this summer. That's quite hard to take, actually. Where are we? So how do future? When some potential exhibits are unique, and some of the links in the lighting story are vulnerable by size or fragility of either the objects or the person who's trying to make them a collection. And some of the links in the lighting story are vulnerable by these things. That can spell disaster for a collection and for the survival of the ideas that inspired it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. Another really interesting presentation, and I think, and again, one for further discussion. I think particularly interesting the way that your collection over the years has been supported both through its kind of commercial application in terms of, you know, renting that equipment out, but also then engaging with education and, you know, finding those kind of, you know, groups of people or you know, people who are going to input into it or support it in different ways based on different needs and different interests, which I think we'll be discussing further. Over now to our fourth presentation of the morning. Chris van Goethem is a researcher at the Expertise Centre for Technical Theatre at the Royal Institute for Theatre, Cinema and Sound in Brussels. He leads the CANON project, which he'll be talking to us about later in the morning, and has what he describes as an orphanage for theatre technical equipment. Chris.
Yes. Hello. Let me present myself first. I'm Chris van Goethem. I started as a state manager, got by accident into education and from education into research. I'm part of the Expertise Center of Technical Theatre, and one of the research line we have is the history of technical theatre. Our methodology is mainly research by doing, in the way we try things out. You've seen the model we built a couple of years ago in the presentation of Bruges, for example. We make this just to try things out. We want to really look at this history from a technician's point of view. And in one of the projects we're running at the moment is the CANON project, and I'm going to talk about that later, so I'll leave that out now. My orphanage or collection is private in the sense that it's not supported except by me and some people that help me. It's a physical collection of about 90 pallets of equipment in a shared warehouse, which has the big advantage that I can use all the accommodation and forklifts and that type of stuff. And the focus is on lighting and mainly on Belgian manufacturers and equipment that was used in Belgium. This is the only way to have a little bit of a focus to avoid that you become a complete hoarder. It's mainly from the 60s till, let's say, the moving lights and so on. What's in there? Spotlights, dimmers, light boards, a lot of light boards, some backdrops, a little bit of sound. And what is missing a lot is accessories. That's especially if you want to make exhibitions, always a problem. You have a spotlight, but you're missing the accessories, the stands, and so on. Next to that, I have an archive, which has technical documentation of a lot of productions, but also publicity and manuals of equipment, but quite a lot of books. And in total, that's more or less a small apartment, which runs a little bit out of hand. The main problem I have is that a lot of it is not really documented. It's not organized. It's all in my head. All the information is there, but at the moment, I don't find the time to really organize it in a proper way as a collection. That's also a bit the reason why I call it more than an orphanage than a real collection. Most of the equipment I have are gifts, and most of the time it starts with kind of a call of someone that says, we are rebuilding our theater or we are cleaning out our office and we found this and this and this, and we have to get rid of it by the end of the week. What I realized is that all these technicians, they've worked, especially for light boards, they've worked for years on that, and they just can't throw it away. So they're looking for another place because they can't keep it into their house because every theater is lacking space. I use the collection mainly for exhibitions and for research. And the exhibitions we started already more than 10 years ago with an exhibition in the Piano Fabric, which was an education program for technicians, and they existed 25 years. And they wanted to have some activity, so we created together with the students. We created a lot of large exhibition. We've done several small exhibitions in trade shows, for example, because there you have the right audience without them having to move. And as Peter already told, also the project in Bruges, we're quite actively involved in it. Of course, a collection like that is a gold mine when you're doing research. You have the real stuff in your hands. You can really see how it works, and you can document it and link it to all the information you have. As part of the Expertise Center, we're supporting different projects of all different sizes. One of the things we're doing is together with Semper, the heritage organization, we're making at the moment a kind of a quick scan of what is still in attics and cellars in theaters. We try to figure out what is there in Flanders in the hope to make a plan on a regional level on what to do with that. It's not only theaters that we make an inventory of. There is also rock and roll service companies, for example. Some of them have really fantastic collections. And the nice thing is that we start to see that all these rock and roll people, they get to an age where they think, oh, we have a heritage, which they didn't realize when they were younger. I'm also helping people that want to get rid of equipment that I can't store into finding a good home, or helping them with looking into equipment in the sense of dating and looking if it's really important, in the sense that some equipment is good to collect for romantic reasons, but has no real historic value, while other equipment is really unique. And in that sense, my connection with Bruges started basically with a call like, we found this strange box and it has pipes coming out of it and it has valves, but there is also colors marked on it. Do you think this is of any use? And it ended up with the oldest limelight we found in Belgium. I've been working on doing experiments with documenting, in the sense that in the idea to make a good inventory of the whole collection. I've been looking into, okay, what do you need to document? What type of pictures do you need to take? What do you need to measure? What's all the information you need to make it a proper collection that is also understandable for example, a museum? Because that's one of the things I realized, that museums don't like a truckload of stuff coming in that is not documented, that is not prepared, that is not ready for storage, let's say. And in that case, in one of the cases, I worked together with a level 5 education program that is also part of our university. They work on archive and information management, and these students are helping me in really developing like a procedure in documenting the whole thing. Main problem is absolutely a lack of time, and more I also start to get a lack of space, but that's what it is. My kids are getting pretty worried because they see the value of my collection, but on the other hand, they have no interest in that field. And I'm getting worried too, because I get a little bit grayer than I was before. So I'm really looking to possible solutions to get a collection that is private and so by definition at risk into kind of a more permanent situation. So my long-term perspective is mainly to find a good home with a long-term guarantee. I try to keep it short. Good. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, that I think adds another dimension to the various things we're talking about. I think particularly struck by that challenge of how do you take a collection that starts and grows through, you know, kind of random chance, really, people offering you things, and trying to balance that out with the need for a collection to have some kind of shape and purpose and definition to it, and on what basis would you ever refuse something? I think it's a really hard thing to do, isn't it, to sort of to say no, but on the other hand, if you don't sometimes say no, or at least yeah, try and provide some kind of structure and organization, then it's yeah, that you kind of reduce the value, in a sense, if it's just a random collection of stuff, rather than something that is kind of curated, managed, documented, and explained in some way, given some order.